Solo leveling has a ton of different power levels, unique classes, special abilities, and powerful weapons that both hunters and monsters can use. And on top of that, a protagonist who seems to operate completely outside of that very system as well, which can make things a little bit difficult to understand. And so in this video, we will explain the entire power system of solo leveling from beginning to the end of the story, including the very special one made for just Jin-woo and the true final bosses of the series. So, many years ago, magical gates started appearing all over the world, and within these gates, adventurers could find dungeons filled with terrifying beasts and equally rewarding treasures. Now, these monsters might have easily overrun the entire Earth, but thankfully, humans were given the power to fight back, with several people across the world awakening special powers. These people are now known as hunters, and it became their main mission to clear the dungeons and so protect the world from the beasts that waited inside of them, ready to break out and wreak havoc. And basically, each awakened hunter is blessed with a fixed level of strength. And what that basically means is that no matter how much practice or training they do, they cannot increase their power level at all. This is true for everyone except, of course, one person, of course, the main character, Jin-woo. And he basically starts the series as the world's weakest hunter, but gains the power to be the only person who can actually increase their strength, hence the title of the show, Solo Leveling, or the even more direct English translation, Only I Level Up. But before we dive into the depths of Jin-woo's actual power system, let's see what the playing field of solo leveling actually looks like for everyone else. First of all, each hunter's magical power is measured and then sorted into 7 different categories. On the very bottom are E-rank hunters like Jin-woo at the beginning, who are only slightly stronger than the average regular human. Then of course D, C, B, and A we go upwards, but some hunters' power levels are truly off the charts and can't even be properly measured by the Hunter Association's tools, and these hunters with seemingly limitless powers are the so-called S-rank hunters. And of course, these S-rank hunters are extremely rare in this world, with only 7 existing in all of South Korea, where solo leveling of course takes place. However, as it turns out, there is even one more rank even above these crazy S-rank hunters. And that's because later in the story, it's actually revealed that there are also nation-level hunters like America's #1 owner of XXXXXL Hawaiian shirts, Thomas Andre. And basically, nation-level hunters make even the super special S ranks look kind of weak in comparison, and this status is truly only given to characters who clear an S rank gate all on their own. Speaking of which, hunters aren't the only ones given rankings. The same is actually true of the magical gates as well. Basically, as gates increase in rank, they also grow in size, as does the magic energy that leaps from them. However, the gates aren't a one-to-one matchup with the hunter strength levels at all, because as gates ranks go up, so does the level of danger, the amount of enemies, and the strength of the final dungeon boss. However, at the same time, the treasures and rewards waiting inside of them also increase in value exponentially. So, for example, E and D rank gates pose basically no threat at all to most hunters. On the other hand though, high level gates do grow exponentially in strength and difficulty. That means that a single A rank hunter is not enough to take on a A rank dungeon. That means that instead a hunter guild may send a party of several A rank and B rank hunters, and likely even then wouldn't be able to defeat the final boss without the aid of an S rank as well. Which means that an S rank dungeon poses such a threat that it puts entire countries at risk, and even a full team of super powerful S rank hunters risks being wiped out by the monsters that lie within such a special rank dungeon. For example, the S rank gate that opened on Jeju Island led to a disastrous dungeon break when basically the Chimera and Arc from Hunter x Hunter spills out to terrorize the entire nation. Oh yeah, I probably should explain that too. A dungeon break occurs 7 days after a dungeon appears if it hasn't been cleared in that time, and unleashes all of the monsters inside of it into the actual human world. Basically, Basically, in that case, it was really lucky that Jeju Island was in the middle of nowhere out on the ocean and not connected to the mainland, because these different missions over the years that attempted to defeat the monsters in it failed, resulting in huge numbers of casualties, with even several S-rank hunters dying in the attempt to defeat the monstrous ants that burst forth from that gate. And basically, whenever a guild takes on any of these gates, no matter the level, it always is very important to bring along a well-balanced party. And if you've ever played any MMORPG before, well, the classes of these hunters and their powers will seem fairly familiar. There are, of course, your classic fighter classes like brawlers and warriors who engage in melee combat with traditional weapons like swords, axes, or even their bare hands. The S-rank hunter 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗣𝗟𝗘𝗧𝗘 is a more graceful fighter who specializes in using all sorts of weapons like swords or even the occasional pickaxe, while on the other hand, someone like Hwang Dong-zu, who moved to America and even harbors a grudge against Jin-woo, is a fighter whose rage and bloodlust lends itself well to pummeling his opponents into a pulp with his fists. And actually, speaking of that grudge, you can't really blame Hwang Dong-zu for wanting to take out Jin-woo. After all, Jin-woo did kill his older brother Hwang Dong-suk, who conveniently is a member of the next class that I'm talking about, because tanks are bulky fighters capable of taking tons of damage from opponents while their allies then dish out attacks without being attacked themselves. Coincidentally, also my personal favorite class when I'm gaming. Now, another great example of a tank is the White Tiger Guild's Kim Chul, whose heavy armor and shield are quite characteristic and traditional for tanks like this. Rangers, as you would expect, specialize in using bows and arrows, but interestingly enough, there's actually only one named ranger type character in all of solo leveling, the Fiend Guild's Lim Tae-gyu. Next up, healers like Jin-woo's friend Lee Joo-hee heal, obviously. Now, the support class is very essential for the survival of any party when they take damage, but can also support the party with stat boost abilities, enhancing their allies' strength or defense. Next up, assassins like Kang Tae-sik here use speed and stealth to gain the upper hand over their opponents, taking them out with swift dagger strikes. And finally, mage class hunters like Mr. Song Chi-yu here use magical attacks often based on an element. For instance, Mr. Song here can use the power of fire, but this character also goes to show just how unfair the magic system of solo leveling can actually be. That's because, as I mentioned earlier, in solo leveling, the magic power of an awakened hunter is absolutely fixed. They might be able to practice with the techniques inside their class, but their actual power level won't increase at all. And Mr. Song here, for instance, got the short end of the stick because prior to the gates ever opening, he was a lifelong sword master. However, as an awakened mage, his skill with the sword means absolutely nothing when it comes to actually fighting a higher ranked hunter who is a fighter or assassin class type, because his swordplay isn't backed up by a magical increase of physical power or speed. And even though technically he's more than skilled enough to be a personal tutor for the S-rank 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗣𝗟𝗧𝗘, his sword skill is absolutely useless when going up against another hunter despite working on it for his entire life up to this point. But of course, all of these classes apply to regular hunters, but the protagonist, Sung Jin-woo, is of course, as we know, not a regular hunter. Basically, after surviving the terrifying experience in the double dungeon, or more like dying and then being resurrected in the double dungeon, I guess, Jin-woo is introduced to the system. Now, this very special newly awakened ability appears as windows popping up in his field of vision, resembling that of a video game user interface. Of course, except for him, no one else can actually see the system, so this series was basically ahead of its time and predicted the Apple Vision Pro, I guess. Only that Jin-woo just doesn't have any need for any of these dorky looking goggles, I guess. And to begin with, the system's first and most obvious feature is that it gives Jin-woo a level and various RPG stats. Basically, whenever Jin-woo defeats an enemy or completes a quest, he gains XP points, and when he levels up, the system then lets him choose how he wants to enhance his own stats. Strength is obviously giving him more raw base power, agility enhances his speed. Now, Sense's effect isn't quite as obvious as the first two. It essentially gives him a kind of spidey sense that warns him of incoming danger or attacks, as well as being able to detect the power levels of the people around him. Vitality increases his health and allows him to take a lot more damage. Intelligence might seem like it would make him smarter, but it has a lot more to do with his amount of mana and ability to use his magical abilities. So that one is a little bit unintuitive. And of course, since Sung Jin-woo used to be a complete weakling, he basically can't resist the temptation of initially pouring all of his stat points into strength and agility. And then in his first system quest, where he's taken to an instant dungeon in a subway station, he then defeats a giant snake that actually drops a powerful special dagger with a quite special poison and drain effect. And so with his use of increasingly stronger daggers and his crazy strength and agility, he finds his niche as an assassin type fighter as well. In fact, he becomes an even better assassin type after killing Kang Ta-shik and stealing his stealth ability, which allows him to turn invisible and hide his presence completely. However, as much as these abilities are a huge plus for Jin-woo, it does seem as though there's a lot more going on with this system. That's because the system is controlling Jin-woo just as much as he's controlling it. For one, it gives him daily quests to train to become stronger, but also dishes out severe punishments if he doesn't meet the system's requirements, like being hunted by giant monsters for several hours a time. However, thanks to his daily Saitama-style workout of 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run, he gets a crazy, and I mean crazy, glow up in the story, growing a lot taller, getting a very muscular physique, and becoming incredibly handsome for some reason. Also, am I the only person who kind of liked his weakling character design a lot more though? I mean, well, I guess my opinion matters very little to him, a lot less than the opinion of like literally every female character in this show, it seems. But anyways, someone or something actively wants Jin-woo to become stronger. A lot stronger, and if someone approaches Jin-woo with murderous intent, the system will actually threaten him to stop his heart if he doesn't take out the opponent instead. As you know, most anime protagonists have a real problem with actually killing someone, but Jin-woo does not have a choice. It's kill or be killed, so he's fully prepared to plead that his murders were all in self-defense, though he does get into it very quickly in the story, let's be real. On top of that, Jin-woo gets other bonuses from the system as well, besides just increasing his power level. For one, he's also granted a seemingly limitless inventory in which he can store potions, enemy drops, weapons, and a lot more. And luckily for Jin-woo, the armor items that he equips can actually be toggled to be invisible, so it doesn't mess with his sleek, all-black goth aesthetic that he has going on. And on top of that, he even has access to an in-game currency that he can then spend at the system store, which lets him get even cooler, rarer, or more powerful items. But eventually, once Jin-woo fulfills the requirements of a key quest, he's given the opportunity to upgrade his class. And since he's basically been pouring all of his stat points into strength and agility, he hopes that he'll be a fighter or some type of warrior type or berserker class. However, the system clearly has other plans, because instead of that, it grants Jin-woo the title of necromancer. And as it turns out, it's kind of a good thing that the system has gotten Jin-woo quite comfortable with the idea of killing his enemies, because now he can turn those enemies into allies. Not through the power of friendship and goodwill, like, you know, many other anime characters, but through transforming their corpses into his faithful shadow servants. At the beginning, he doesn't have a lot of mana to actually make use of this, since he's been very much neglecting his intelligence stat, but soon on he's able to amass an army of shadowy servants. Which means that once the weakest hunter, at this point Jin-woo is actually on par with many of the S-rank hunters, and using his Legion of Shadows, he's able to easily clear whole gates by himself, no party or guild needed at all. And this is especially true because he has shadow soldiers like Igris, a powerful knight, and eventually gains comrades like a tank, a giant polar bear, Iron, a heavyweight shield bearer, Tusk, an incredible mage, and Kaisel, a literal freaking dragon. But those are only the beginnings of his shadow soldiers, some of which rival the power of other S-rank hunters all on their own. The power scaling in this show is truly very wild, but hey, that, I guess, is the whole point here. But once Jin-woo learns what's really behind the world of hunters as well as his own power, he's going to need to be insanely strong to face the true threat facing planet Earth. And that threat are the monarchs. And even though the S-rank hunters seem to be incomprehensibly powerful at the beginning of the series, the actual villains of this show are on another whole level entirely. And so to explain these powers, let's go into the deep lore behind solo leveling. And let me just say, wow. At the beginning of this kind of cool reverse isekai, I did not believe that I was going to have to wrap my head around a whole religious cosmology. More like solo liturgy, am I right? Okay. In the beginning, the absolute being created light and darkness. He separated the light to create a race of angelic beings called the rulers, meant to maintain order and balance in the world, and he split the darkness to create the monarchs, bent on chaos and destruction. Okay, but since this isn't the solo lore-villing video, though let me know in the comments if you would like to see that. In order to get back to our power system here, let's make a long story very short and just say that now this eternal battle has come to Earth. Because turns out that the good rulers have only created the system of gates to start infusing magical powers into the Earth in the first place. Basically, the monarchs were planning on destroying the planet, and by blessing some of the humans with mana, they hoped that at least a small fraction would survive the coming war. And so it kind of turns out that every single monster that we had seen up to this point was actually a prisoner of war who was originally a subject of one of the 9 monarchs. And so the good rulers then set them on a path of destruction on Earth simply to help humans prepare for the upcoming conflict. And I gotta say, it would have been nice of them to at least leave a note or something. But yeah, let's talk about the 9 monarchs and which types of monsters they have within their domain. First is the Frost Monarch, king of the snowfolk-lice ice elves. Then Rakan, the monarch of fangs, who controls all types of magical beasts. Legia, monarch of the beginning, who was the king of giants. Baran, the monarch of the white flames, commanded legions of demons. Tarnak, the monarch of the iron body, was the king of the monstrous humanoids, meaning human-like species such as orcs. Queresha, the monarch of plagues, controlled insects like the giant ants from the Chimera, the Jeju Island raid arc. Yolkmoons, the monarch of transfiguration, who rules over something called demonic specters, and it's not really explained in the series which monsters these are exactly, I guess. But most powerful of all of them is Antares, the monarch of destruction and king of dragons. And basically all of these figures account for all the monsters that we've seen in the series, but each of them themselves is basically as powerful as countless armies of monsters, their powers truly only matched by the rulers themselves, who are the light to their darkness. But wait, that's only 8. What about the 9th monarch? I've been talking about him all along because it turns out that Jin-woo is the monarch of shadows, the king of the dead. Or to be more precise, I guess, Jin-woo was the chosen successor of the previous shadow monarch, Ashbourne. Now, Ashbourne was originally the greatest fragment of brilliant light, the most powerful of the rulers and the absolute being's most faithful servant, Lucifer. But eventually he basically gained the power of the dead and wanted to use it to end the unceasing war between the rulers and the monarchs. Then, with the help of the architect, he found a suitable vessel in Jin-woo, a human who was compatible with his own powers. Oh yeah, and the architect actually was the one who designed the system as a way of gradually strengthening Jin-woo and allowing him access to Ashbourne powers bit by bit so that his human body could actually handle it. And so yeah, basically thanks to this divine intervention, Jin-woo for sure had one of anime's best and greatest glow-ups, with all of those push-ups somehow growing him like a whole head taller. And yet the various orcs, dragons, giants, and so on just tower over him, but even a giant statue of God with the most evil smile in the world can stack up to some of anime's truly biggest characters. In fact, it kind of turns out that basically everything in solo leveling looks absolutely minuscule compared with some of the characters in this crazy anime size comparison right here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or learned something, please like, share, subscribe. It is very annoying to hear, but it does help out a small channel like this a lot. Otherwise, I wish you a great day and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.